Hello beautiful people and welcome to another video. In this one I'll be working on this old and really beat up drop leaf table. You know those quick projects that you think you could do in a couple of days? Well, this is one of them, and you will see why. To begin with, these screws were completely fused with the hinges and there was no way I was going to be able to unscrew them. So I started with applying some WD-40 to see if that would help. Something that also helps sometimes is just hitting the screws with a hammer, but it didn't do anything. I just realized that I think there used to be a drawer, because obviously it's not open on the other end, so I do think there used to be a drawer over there. Remember when I said this is one of those quick projects? This is why I'll need to make a drawer from scratch. So I used my heat gun to hopefully expand the screws a little bit. That didn't help. I used WD-40 on hot hinges because that would allow it to penetrate easier, but that didn't do anything. So I didn't have many options left. If you look at the screws, they look handmade, which indicates that this is a very old table, so that's why the screws were fused. There was a little bit of woodworm damage. At least I thought it was a little bit. I realized there was much more when I took the table apart. And I also tried rust remover on the hinges, hoping that that would loosen up the rust and allow me to unscrew the screws, but that didn't help either. Since all of the other things didn't work, this is how I managed to get the hinges out, which basically means I'll need to plug the holes with dowels, but that's okay. At least I didn't do much damage. I did exactly the same for the other side of this leaf, but I could not remove the other two hinges, so I just left them because I didn't want to cause any damage. And as you can see, this wooden hinge was completely destroyed, so I would have to replace it. There goes the quick project again. Well, so this is half of the wooden hinge that allows the leaf to go up and down and move on the other half of the hinge. So I basically just need to cut off the damaged area, replace it with a piece of wood, and then shape it in exactly the same way so it fits the other half of the existing hinge. Getting these screws out was not much better, and they were super rusty, and I had to use pliers to get them out because, yeah, you couldn't just unscrew them. I finally managed to get half of the top off, and as you can see, part of the middle section is actually broken, so I'll need to reglue it. And the last screw wasn't coming out without a fight, so this is what I had to do to get it out. All of these little support pieces had woodworm damage in them, so I took them off. I think I'll attach the top to the base in a different way so it's easier to remove it in case someone needs to repair it in the future. I hope you can see the state of this hinge and the screws, so this is why I left it. I didn't want to damage the table or break the hinge. Another thing I had to do for this quick project was to fix this bit because the glue was completely dry and it was all loose. I'm going to use brown glue because this is what was likely used originally. Fortunately, nothing was broken, so this was pretty straightforward. Basically had to apply some glue, put the piece back in and clamp it together. By the way, I had audio recorded with the video, but I plugged my microphone in the wrong hole, so it just sounded terrible. So this is why I'm doing voiceover, but that's only for the first few minutes of the video. As you can see, there was more woodworm damage, so I just sprayed everything to make sure everything was okay. To make my life a little easier, rather than worrying about trying to put the hinges back exactly the way they are supposed to go, because this is all handmade and, you know, just one-off, I just left them in place. And if you remember, the middle section was broken in half, so I have to fix that. Have I mentioned this was supposed to be a quick project? After taking all the paint off and making sure there was a nice and clean surface, I used brown glue as well and I just clamped it back together. It was a little awkward trying to clamp it together with the leaf attached, but it worked. And this is probably the most difficult part of this restoration. As you remember, I cut off the damaged hinge and now I'm just basically replacing it with a piece of wood that I will need to shape to the same curve that was underneath to begin with. Unfortunately, this was not the last of the repairs I had to make. Every single end of those legs was rotten, so I had to cut them off. I don't believe this is original. It just looks like someone painted it on with a brush and did a really crappy job. So this is ugly and it needs to come off. It's a good thing I decided to sand everything off because there was a lot of damage underneath and it was not pretty. And after taking all the varnish off, I realized that there was much more woodworm damage. Yay!
$2,000 later.
Fun fact, this is soot mixed with animal fat and this is what people used to stain wood. And I think this is the original finish and whatever was on the rest of it is just something that someone put on later on. I'm just using wood filler on all the little holes from woodworm. And on this corner I'm going to use epoxy because this isn't strong enough. When the glue was dry, I used a putty knife to remove any excess and I scraped off the paint with my carbide scraper. I know that if I don't test it for lead, some of you will point it out, so I'm going to do it. And as you know, I'm fancy AF, so I'm using wine vinegar. This looks like chalk paint, but better safe than sorry. It's fine. As you can probably see, there's quite a lot of damage. I'll do some sanding and see if I can get rid of all the scratches, and then we'll look at the stains, because that will determine the final color of this table. So generally speaking, sanding hardwood takes way more time than something like pine, but this took absolutely forever. And not only because there was paint, but also all the scratches and all the other problems. As it's always the case with old furniture, the corners and the edges have the most damage, so I'm just going to gently round all the edges over a bit more, just so I can remove the paint and get rid of all those minor imperfections and chips. I'm basically doing what's absolutely necessary just to make this look nice, and if there is anything bigger like this, I'll probably need to fill it in. If there was just a piece of thin veneer on top of this, if the damage is really bad, you can't really do anything about it. You just need to replace the whole thing. And in this case, there's a nice chunky piece of solid wood, so you can do a lot of sanding, you can use moisture and heat, you can scrape it, you can bleach it, you can do anything you want. Even with a lot of damage, there is a high possibility that I'll be able to actually make this look decent. Before I do any more sanding, I'm going to see whether I can fix some of them with moisture and heat. So I could just sand it, but I don't want to remove several millimeters of wood because it's just wasteful. And this way I can raise all the fibers, and it's gonna make it much quicker of a job for me with sanding. And also I don't need to remove so much wood. And some of the paint, like in here, it should be able to just come out on its own because it's not very deep. So this is why I'm doing this before I do any sanding. So there was actually a big ding with paint in it, and it's completely flat now. You can't even tell there was a damage. I'll see if I can show you how this works. There is, a bit of wood missing, and it's been filled with paint. I think you get an idea how this works and how effective this can be. With a little bit of sanding, you would never know that there was any damage here. And for the annoying paint in the grain like this, it's pretty much gone. So I've sanded this, and as you can see, this is far from perfect. These are marks from where the hinges used to be, so I think there were screws or nails through the top. They're holes that have been filled, and I think those are just cut off nails or screws. I don't know, I need to look at it, but yeah, that's not ideal. Oxalic acid will raise the grain a little bit more, so that will help with sanding. As you can see, the glue on the repaired piece of wood is now dry, so I need to use my electric planer to make sure it's the same thickness as the rest of the leaf, because it was actually a bit thicker. So this is what the tabletop looks like after the first application of oxalic acid. I would say this is an improvement. Most of the stains are gone, other than these. So I'm going to do another coat. If you're applying oxalic acid on several pieces of wood, just remember how many applications you've done, because you'll end up with different shades of whatever color you end up with. I'm going to sand this as well, and I'll repeat the application of oxalic acid on this part. The reason I'm not cutting this off right now is because I'll be using a router bit to shape this bit, and that might end up with a blowout at the end. And if that happens, I'll be able to cut this off and it will be nice and smooth. Old friend came to say hello and get some free snacks. Say hello to my YouTube friends. So this is the leaf that's intact, and I'm going to measure this to make sure that the other one on the other side is exactly the same. Yeah. final fit test. That is pretty perfect to me. Do you guys mind? I'm recording. Alright, it's time to make the drawer. I took the measurements and I found a piece of mahogany wood from my old project. I think it was actually the mid-century modern desk challenge that I did, and that was big enough to make the drawer front. Because this is an old table and there's no plywood on it, I wanted to make the sides, the front and the back from solid wood and only use a piece of plywood for the bottom. Because there's only one drawer in this table, I don't need to replicate anything else, so it was actually pretty nice to do whatever I wanted to do. So this is just a tiny bit too big, but that's on purpose because now I can adjust it. So I got the drawer front, now I just need to make the rest of the drawer. Because this piece of wood was much thicker than the drawer front and also had a lot of lacquer on it, I just ran it through my planer. So I've got a decent looking piece of wood, but it's got some holes in the back, so I'm gonna fill them in with wood filler. I'm not going to stain the inside of the drawer, so I'm going to use wood filler that's going to be similar color to the final look. I measure the thickness of the side of the drawer and I transfer it onto the ends of the drawer front because I'm going to make something that's called a stopped lap joint. And instead of trying to explain what it is, you'll just see. It's simple, it's very elegant, and it looks nice. My saw has a feature that's called, I believe, trenching, which means I can stop it at a certain depth and I can use it kind of like a dado stack and remove whatever amount of wood I want to a certain depth. And this is how I'm going to join the drawer, if it makes sense. Now I'm gonna cut a groove over here where the bottom of the drawer will sit in, and I'm gonna do it for the sides and for the front. And to make sure I wouldn't have to clean the glue from the inside of the drawer, I just taped off all the bits that I don't want any glue to get on. Once I apply the glue, I use those angle clamp thingies just to hold everything in place, and then I use a different type of clamp which is used for frames, I think, and this allowed me to squeeze everything together, give it some pressure. I also applied some extra clamps just to be on the safe side, and I left it to dry. When I was done with that, I cut a piece of veneered plywood for the bottom of the drawer, and Bob's your uncle. Oh, and I also put it in and I screwed it in so it wouldn't fall out. The drawer needed something to slide on, and because the drawer slides were missing, I made new ones. Mando stopped by to check on the progress, and I think he was happy with where things were going, so he gave me a green light. And this is what I did to clean the hinges because they were nasty. As always, I want to make sure I appreciate you guys, and I say thank you to everyone who watches my videos for all the comments and likes, because, It allows me to do what I do, and I really enjoy my job. And if you want to support the channel and the cats, you can find all the links in the description, and I will love you forever. Thank you. And by the way, there was a big crack that I didn't see before, so I just fixed it. I also made a little wooden thingy for the drawer so it wouldn't fall out when you pull it all the way out, because that would be very unprofessional of me if it did. And in case you didn't know, I'm a professional. If you remember, after I pulled out those hinges, there were just holes in the wood, so I just glued in some dowels and cut them off, and yeah, it's all sorted now. And obviously, I use my dental tool to get some of the paint out, because, you know, it's just a thing that I do. So this corner is slightly worn, and I could leave it because it's not a big deal, but it annoys me. So I'm going to glue a piece of wood in here to make it square. I'm just making the surface behind it flat so I can glue a piece of wood to it. Now that I'm thinking about it, I wish it didn't annoy me because it was just so tiny. It was completely unnecessary to do this. That's definitely better. Took a good 2 hours just for this little piece. That's how deep the scratches were, and that's how many of them were. That's insane, but it's looking great. I just need to fix this little area, and it's good to go. I'm just going to rough this up a little bit so the wood filler has something to grab onto. I'm going to put quite a lot more than I need to, just because it's going to shrink. Because many people skip the middle of the video and go straight to the final reveal, I'm just gonna drop a bomb and tell you that I got a new apprentice. So this is what will prevent the drawer from falling out. And if you want to take it out, you do it like that. Pretty simple, old school, but effective. I've also made these two little drawer stops, and I'm going to put them over here so the drawer stops exactly at the right place. I'll wax it so it slides a bit easier, but it works and it doesn't come out. Wow, this tabletop took me half a day to sand it, and this is only done with 120 grit, and that includes 3 short crying breaks. Alright, let's see if I can do anything about all these. I've got some shellac in here and a little bit of alcohol. I'll start by basically just covering all these with white, and then I'll apply the pigment on top of it, because otherwise it's going to be pretty difficult to do it. Shellac dries in seconds, so I'll be able to apply another coat right after. I'm gonna try and mix the burnt sienna and burnt umber. I think this will give me the closest color. This will take multiple layers, and hopefully I'll be able to blend it in. So this is the third coat. I'm gonna make the last coat a bit darker. And as far as I understand the process, this is all about mixing the colors that are part of the color of the wood and layering them on top of each other. But I've never been able to do it to a point that I was super happy with it. But I guess it takes some time to learn it. I think I'm okay with the color. I'm gonna let it dry, and I'll apply shellac that's tinted slightly with one of these on top of everything and try to blend it in. So this is shellac that I made a while ago, and I just added some of the pigments. Well, let's see how this goes. I'm going to use 400 grit sandpaper and try to smooth out these little bumps from where I made the repairs. And I'm going to be very gentle because I don't want to take off all the color and shellac that I've just applied. Because of the repair, obviously I have a piece of wood that's got a different color from the rest. So I'll try to color match it. And this color wasn't the right one, but this is not the end of it, and actually it turned out pretty nice. This is fine steel wool, and I'm just using it to smooth out the surface, and it's just going to make the next layer go on nicer. I've actually changed my plan. Surprise, surprise. Surprise, surprise. Not too crazy about this color. It's a bit like plum mahogany. So I'm going to apply stain on top of this. And I'm very happy that I decided to do this because it's looking nice. The larger part of the tabletop had a lot of damage, so that took multiple coats and I didn't actually record it, but you'll see the end result.
A few moments later.
I'm pretty happy with the color of this added piece, but I'm just going to add a tiny bit of basically just dry brushing, just so I can blend it in even better. I think once I apply the top coat, this will be pretty seamless. And this is for the two of you who apparently think my knees are sexy, so you're welcome. By the way, if you guys are wondering what this is for angle grinders to remove the disc. What do you think about my decision to add those brass casters? I think it looks much better. And just wait until I put the stain on. This is oil-based stain called Jacobean. Because I didn't have to do color correction on the bottom, it's gonna look a bit different, but close enough. This is made from pine, oak and mahogany anyway, so it's got different colors, but I'll get it as close as I can. Because I'm a professional. The weather has been absolutely dreadful the last few days. It's been raining, so it takes a long time for oil-based stains to dry, and I wanted to apply hard wax oil, which takes a while as well. So I haven't been able to do it because I wanted to get the video out. So just so you know what this will actually look like, I applied some wax, and I will remove it and apply a proper clear coat when the weather improves. This is also why the lighting in my final photos isn't the greatest, because I take them outside when I can. Anyhow, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have, give me a like and a comment, subscribe if you haven't, and thank you so much for watching. Enjoy the final results and see you in the next video.